Hi, and welcome to Table Talks. I am your host, Janell Workentine. We are so glad you are here. Go grab your coffee and your tea because we're about ready to sit down with Kelle Sparta, who has been a healer and a coach to healers for the last 50 years. I know. She said she started her journey when she was 5. And I asked her about that. I said, okay, this is interesting. Can you please tell us what were you doing at 5? So she unpacks that, her intuitive development and understanding about her gifts journey. How empowering is it to know who you are at such a young age? Because some of us, me included, we had shut down our gifts because they didn't make sense at the time. Here we are in a culture, often many of us in a culture and a surrounding, no real judgment on it. I think it's just it wasn't understood at the time. So we didn't understand it either. And here we are experiencing being highly empathic and all that goes with it. It can be overwhelming. It can cause a lot of anxiety, social anxieties for one. And we shut these down as a coping skill. But what happens is we then shut down our internal compass and that truest part of ourselves. So reconnecting that's what I walk with people and help them do is reconnect, discover, activate, and learn to really be that intuitive, connected to that intuitive side of themselves. So as Kelle shares her story and how she was blessed to be in a space that understood that and she was able to develop that at a very young age. And now she is helping individuals, spiritual entrepreneurs, to market themselves in today's online platform. And that is huge because if you're like me, this has been a bit of a journey and figuring it out because not everyone and every style of marketing fits us. So she looks at that with us, gives us some great tips. So I'm glad you are here. So grab your coffee, grab your tea, and join Kelle and I. Hello and welcome to Table Talks. We're sitting down with Kelle Sparta. Thank you for joining us. You have such an interesting story to share with the audience today. I can't wait to dive into it. How you walk the journey, your spiritual journey, and all the pieces that make you you today. Rich, 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 rich. And how you are supporting spiritual business people put their businesses together successfully. There's many of us looking at that frontier going, oh my gosh. And we get, yeah, and we get advice from all directions. And a lot of times it doesn't work for us as intuitives and spiritual business individuals as it does it for other businesses. Truth, right?
Very true. There's two pieces. One is that the marketing that they tell you to use in every other business on the planet doesn't work for us. And the other one is that our market has a smog of poverty at the bottom of it that is a problem as well. And so those two pieces go into the mix. And so you've got to be aware of both of those to be able to be successful.
All right. We are so going to unpack that together. I'm excited to take a look at that with you. But before we do, let's hear about you, your story. In your bio, you're talking about your journey began at 5 years old. What does this look like as an intuitive at 5 years old?
Yeah. So my parents got divorced when I was 5, and my mother went on an immediate quest for self-improvement. And she, I had been my mother's best friend since the day I was born. And so we went together. And so she went and did the early version of EST, which, if you know anything about that, it was really hardcore. It's now a kinder, gentler version in Landmark Forum. So the Landmark Forum is what EST became over time. And so she brought that home when I was 5 or 6 years old. And growing up, it was all cassette tapes, right? Because I'm old. And so we were listening to cassette tapes and reading books. And, we didn't do a lot of watching TV in those early days. We did a lot of listening to cassettes. And anytime we were doing anything, a cassette was playing in the background with all the personal growth stuff and all the things, right? So, mom did what most people did and what most people do when they step into the spiritual world, which is she went straight into a spiritual addiction. She was like, okay, how much information can I consume at once? And, if I consume enough, maybe I'll feel better. And of course that doesn't work. But, the process was really good for me because I was doing self-hypnosis by the time I was 10. I was reading tarot cards by the time I was 12. Mom had me in psychic development classes because she had been psychic when she was a kid and she got scared of it and shut it down, never figured out how to open it back up. And so she was determined it was not going to happen to me. And so effectively, I was raised like a shaman would have been raised, right? Even though it was in a Western culture society. And so I have been doing, I've studied religion and occult and Wicca and shamanism and energy healing and wellness and herbalism. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff, but, I've sort of run the gamut, right? And, it was interesting because people ask me, they're like, how long have you been a coach? And I'm like, well, depends on how you look at it, because I have high school yearbook signatures that look like my client testimonials. Yeah. And so, it's not what I do, it's who I am. Right.
That's incredible. And a lot of the people that I have talked to and about their journey, and people that are figuring their journey out now and they're discussing this, many of us shut it down. And I'm one of those. When I was a child, it's so overwhelming. You're not in a culture that's understanding those gifts. So you don't understand those gifts. So what a beautiful upbringing that you got to grow in the understanding from 5 forward and develop those. That's just amazing.
Yeah, there's stuff that if you get it before the age of reason, which is 7, there's stuff that just sort of gets into the underpinnings, right? It's like you just intuitively understand things that other people have to be taught. And it's because it came in without filter.
Right.
And so it just is in my beingness. Right. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Yeah, and and people are having to relearn what they knew. Absolutely. Yes. Gets in before the underpinning. Yeah, that early childhood development stage where we're so open and sponges. And yeah, that's beautiful. And a lot of parents that are now understanding their gifts now are raising their children in that awareness and the freedom to feel and understand who they are in their intuitive side. That's a real shift our society is taking.
Yeah.
Which is
my mother said that I was talking to ghosts in my crib. So which was funny that she said that, because she said she couldn't see anything, but she knew I was talking to ghosts. So I'm like, really? You can't see anything, Mom?
Then how did you know?
I think you can,
Yeah. Well, very cool. What a neat story. And then you came to a part of your life, though, that you were successful as a businesswoman, but you said, enough. This is not. What happened there? Because here you are, this intuitive, if you want to go there, an intuitive individual. You built a business. Was it not connecting to you as a intuitive?
So I had a real estate business, and it was actually a reflection of my authentic self, because I am an initiatrix, which means I initiate people from one state of being, one identity into another. And when you sell houses, you're taking people from one identity, one house to a different identity and a different house. So it was in alignment with me. But I burned out pretty hard my first year in the business. Like, I was working 100-hour work weeks and I was falling down and just like exhausted at the end. And literally to the point where I had some PTSD responses when I went out and came back in a little later and stuff. So I was like, so I needed to be done with that career. But I didn't actually jettison the career until I jettisoned my whole life. So what happened was I was in my Saturn return. I was 28 and Saturn came in and just went, nope, we're done. and I looked at my life. I woke up one day and I was like, this, I have the American dream. I built it. I have a successful business. I was president of a Habitat for Humanity affiliate. I was a pillar of my community. I had a trophy husband. I had the big house. I had a dog. We had 2 cars. We had it all. And I hated my life. I hated it. I was in a cold war with my husband. The dog didn't even like me. I never wanted the big house that we had. It was a compromise like everything else in my life with that husband. And I had burned out on the business the first year I'd been in it, and that was 7 years in. And I was working full time in my volunteer position at the nonprofit because I was, not happy in everywhere else, and so I was hiding in the nonprofit doing the work there. And I was like, okay, this is enough, because I always wanted to be Auntie Mame without the alcohol. And if you've never seen the Rosalind Russell movie, you need to. But it's a 1965 Rosalind Russell movie called Auntie Mame, M-A-M-E. And I always wanted to be Auntie Mame without the alcohol. And my life looked nothing like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. And I razed it all to the ground. I sold the business, divorced the husband, made him take the dog, sold the house, moved out of state to live with a bunch of people I met at the Renaissance Fair who all turned out to be witches and shamans.
Oh, darn.
Which I did not know before I moved in with them. Well, I kind of did know before I moved in. I knew before I moved in with them. I did not know when I met them. But yeah.
And so you're on your learning journey then. Here.
Yeah, well, that journey, we refer to that house as the magical house, because the house itself was sentient after the resident shaman pulled the ley line over to the corner of the house and woke the house up, because it was a 100-year-old house. And so the house itself was sentient, and random things and magical things happened periodically. We actually had to create some magical rules for the house, because every time something went wrong, we created a new rule. So no mucking about with time and space within the confines of the property. Guests, corporeal and non-corporeal, can only stay for 3 days, and they must stay in your room. Do not open any doors that you don't know where they go. If doors and windows open of their own accord, do not wait to see what happens. Inform the house warden immediately. If you summon it, it is your job to banish it. And always, always, always take out the trash. So
and that means in all ways, take out the trash.
In all ways, yes, in all ways. So yeah, every single one of those rules came from something that somebody did that messed with other people. So.
Got it. Yeah. I love the rules. Yeah, we have to have rules. But it's boundaries, and you speak about boundaries.
Yes.
So you were setting up
because actually I started doing boundaries in that house. I came up with some of those rules, and I started doing some other boundary work there, but I didn't really get boundaries. I had to actually go on walkabout for a year. When I left that house, I lived in my car and on $350 a month in the kindness of strangers on spiritual pilgrimage for a year. I went 14,000 miles, and I learned my boundaries there because I'm an empath. And so I didn't know where I ended and other people began. I didn't know who I was unless I was in reflection to other people. And I'm a strong personality. And for me to say that is like, really? And yeah, really. I really did not know. And so I speak very strongly about boundaries. In fact, it's a free download on my website, is the Boundaries for Empaths piece, because it's so important and so many empaths need it so desperately. And it is one of those pieces where you have to really get a grip on your own boundaries in order to actually be able to accomplish much of anything. Because until you do, you're mixing your energy with other people's, and you don't have any control over what their energy is. We manipulate like mad to try and make them feel differently, do differently, be differently, because we're being impacted by it. But that's not the answer. The answer isn't to fix other people. The answer is to fix the way that we're holding the energy that we're holding. So, yeah.
And as an empath, it's part of our gift. But to work our gift, you have to have that boundary. Exactly.
Yes.
Or we can't work in our gift.
Yes, I use my empath skills every day.
Mm-hmm.
But I use them consciously instead of unconsciously now.
Isn't that powerful? Woohoo.
Yeah.
An exclamation mark on that right there. Bam. Yeah. Okay. And Kelle, you're a host of a podcast called Spirit Sherpa. Did I say it right?
Spirit
Sherpa.
Sherpa. Yeah.
And I asked you in the beginning, and I said, what's Sherpa? And it was so cool. So tell us, what is Sherpa?
Yeah. So a Sherpa is the person who carries your baggage and guides you up the mountains in the Himalayas. It's a Tibetan term. Mm-hmm. And when I was thinking about, who am I as a spiritual guide, I'm like, yeah, I'm a Sherpa. I will be the guide that gets you up the mountain, but I'm also going to carry some of the stuff along the way, because especially when you're new in the spiritual world, one of the first things that people do with a new teacher is they hang their power on the teacher. And that's appropriate. It is appropriate because they don't know where they're going. They don't know what they're doing. They're like, okay, you tell me what to do. You tell me where to go. And I'm going to do that because and I don't. That's an appropriate thing to do. The problem is that a lot of spiritual teachers out there take that power and they like, oh, power for me. Thank you. I will use this power. I will feel like I'm important from this power and I will do this stuff with this power. And so when the student comes to the point where they're ready to take their power back, the teacher fights them for it and will oftentimes like eviscerate them if they try to leave, saying, you're not ready. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, awful, awful things. So I hear all these stories. And, that's because the teacher wasn't evolved enough to recognize that they shouldn't be using this, right? And that they shouldn't be using it to make themselves feel important or even using it for their own power for use, right? When students come to me and they're like, oh, I'm good and I'm ready to take this back. I'm like, great, I've held it over here in the corner for you. Here you go. Knock yourself out, right? And I'm so excited that you're at the stage where you're ready to take it back. That means that you've hit this area, right? And so, but you've got to make sure you've got a teacher who does that, because otherwise it can be a very dangerous scenario to leave a teacher. So one of the things I tell my students is, if you're going to work with another teacher, ask to talk to somebody who's left the program, because that'll give you an idea of how people are dealt with who leave the program.
And it can be really subtle, can't it? Like it can be very verbal and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're in that vulnerable feeling place. Or it can be very subtle and you just feel like, have this feeling, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss out if I don't do the next thing. Oh my gosh, I'm going to need that. I need that. And I've experienced that in a program, and that's exactly the feeling I was having. And I stood back and I went, wait a second, what? Because it finally dawned on me, that's not me. That's not me. And it's so subtle, and you walk in and you're trusting. Then that need to be aware. I find that awareness. And that's why I wanted to bring this up. And when you shared with me that what the title of your podcast meant, I said, we have to bring this into the conversation, because we're learners, and that's good. But as we're learning, excuse me, and as we're growing, this awareness is huge. And just be aware. And you can learn from some great people. But if you go in aware and you've got that boundary and awareness already set up, you can learn without giving your power away. Yeah.
And I want to make a comment in there too, because I alluded to this earlier and I realized I didn't say it out loud. So I want to say it out loud. I said that my mother went into a spiritual addiction, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where everybody starts. In fact, that's why I started my podcast, was I wanted to shorten the distance of the spiritual addiction, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens is you come in going, I'm not happy, and you're looking for a magic pill to fix it. And then you find tarot cards and crystals and angels and, all the cool things, right? And you go, ooh, and you go down all these different rabbit holes, and life is so fun. And and you take all these different classes and you do all these different things. And then somewhere 2 to 5 years down the road, you go, wait a minute, that was cool, but I still feel like crap, right? Yeah. And I haven't gotten any better. And that is when you start to actually do the real work, right? Because that's when you start to say, well, maybe there isn't a magic pill outside of me, which is why I was saying the spiritual addiction doesn't work, is because the answer isn't outside of you. The answer is inside of you. And you have to give up the quest for the magic pill and start to do the inner work in order to start to feel better, right? And ironically, not ironically, but correlatively, the inner work that you do also amplifies your ability to be powerful and magical, because you are no longer seeking your power outside of yourself, you're seeking it within, and there is infinitely more power within than there is without.
Mic
And
drop.
so, mic drop. So, when I teach energetics, I always teach them with personal growth and transformation. It's less personal growth and more transformation. So we do identity up leveling, right? So it's about changing how you see yourself and who you perceive yourself to be, rather than personal growth is often around, how do I create good coping mechanisms? I'm not a fan of coping mechanisms. I'm a fan of, eliminate the thing that you need the coping mechanisms for.
Yeah.
Right? And if you do
Into
that,
the
then it's not there anymore, and therefore the coping mechanisms are irrelevant, which is good because they disappear when you're triggered. So,
right.
if you're triggered
And now
enough, your
you're
coping mechanisms go whee right out the door. Right?
and you're freeing up so much bandwidth at that moment, because to work with coping mechanisms, and they have a place and time in our lives for different reasons, but once we can eliminate those and heal the root of that, then oh my gosh, the bandwidth you have now,
amazing.
Yeah. And you're going to be able to operate within your gifts freer, because you're not having to be like this, and so many benefits to that. Way to go. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So here we go. Your work is walking with spiritual entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Helping them make their business happen out there. They've done the work. They're ready to go. They're like, okay, this is burning a hole in me. I've got to get this done. How do I do it? But what we get information wise doesn't always fit. Talk to us about what goes on here. What's different about us?
So, let me talk about what's different about the market first.
Okay.
Because that informs what's different about us. And so the challenge is that smog of poverty at the bottom, right? That smog of poverty comes also with a smog of victimhood. Right. And when you understand that the people who are in the poverty piece are also in their victim state, then you understand why you get the responses that you get. Oh, you shouldn't charge for your services. They should be free, right? Well, that's my favorite one. I'm like, they're a gift from God. I'm like, does the child prodigy who has an amazing gift get paid? Yes. Does the medical professional who is amazing at what they do get paid? Yes. Does everybody on the freaking planet who does anything that God gave them a gift for get paid? Yes. So why should we be different? We shouldn't. So just shut up and sit down. That's where I go. I was just like, I got no energy for that. That's just you putting your victimhood onto me, right? It's them saying, well, I'm a victim, therefore you should give it to me. And the challenge is that most of us who come into this work come from challenged childhood environments where we were a reflection of the people around us, where we were told that we had to be the people pleaser, and where we had to give people what they wanted. And therefore we feel like we have to give them what they want, and give it away for free or for cheap or for sliding scale or for, whatever, because they need it. But the fact is that if you're giving things away or you're working on a sliding scale that pays you less than what you need to make a living, you're not running a business, you're running a charity. And if you're not getting grants, you can't afford to run a charity, right? So you need to stop running a charity. But the problem is that we have this, I have to take care of everyone energy, right? And so we fight internally with ourselves around that. And so you have to find a way to come into that alignment for yourself, right? That's part of the work of doing this. But the other side of it is that even if people are willing to pay you, they pay small amounts because they're in their victim state, so they don't have a lot of money. And then we go, okay, well, I'll just charge small amounts. Well, you don't sit down and do the math. If you don't have a mailing list of 10,000 people, you can't make a living doing $97 programs. You can't. You're not gonna pay your bills. You got to sit down and do the math, because 1% of the people who come through your mailing list will ever buy from you, right? On average. I mean, if you're really good, you might get 3, right? But 3% is still not a lot. And that's over the course of the life of their time of being on your list. That's not today, right? Mm-hmm. So it may be over the next 2 or 3 years. So 300 people over the next 2 or 3 years is 100 people at $100. That's not a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. So, so it's $10,000 in case you didn't do math. So the point is that you're not going to make a lot of money doing it that way. And I see a lot of people going, oh, well, start small and build up and whatever. And sure, can you do that? Yeah, but it takes freaking forever. Okay. So, you have to be willing to charge more. And the reason you charge more is not because you're elitist. It's because the people who can afford to pay you are also the people who can actually benefit from your services. Mm-hmm. People who are stuck in their victim, they're in many ways, they're in love with their victim. I call it the misery box, right? They're in their misery box and they're in love with their misery box, and they're in a race to see who had a worse day. They're in a competition to see who had the worst day, right? And there's a lot that they get from being in their misery box. And so therefore, if they're not at a point where they're fed up with their misery box, you can't help them, no matter how much you try, right? And if you've ever been in a relationship with an addict, you understand. They're addicted to their victim, right? So you have to be careful that you're not marketing to people who are addicted to their victim. And this is where how everybody else tells you to market comes into play, right? Because all the marketing bros out there say, oh, highlight the pain, tell everybody about the pain. And I'm like, look, the people who are in their victim are going to resonate so much with all the pain points. They're going to be like, yes, I'm in my pain, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're going to come and they have no money and they have no actual desire to get better, really. They think they do, but they're not actually doing it yet, right? The challenge is that the people who are ready to make the change are done with their freaking pain. They don't want you to talk about it. They're aware of it, but they are moving on and they have put it behind them, and they're going to move into a future that looks better. They don't necessarily know what that looks like because they're not good at knowing what they want or need because they weren't allowed to have wants and needs, right? But they know there's something better and they want it. And so if you can give them a vision of where they're going and what they want, that's when those people will buy, right? And so the marketing bro stuff says highlight the pain, and it just brings you all these broke people, and it brings you all these people who aren't ready to do the work. Okay. And so I know that sounds harsh, and some people out there are going to be going, well, we should be taking care of them and helping them get better, blah blah blah. And I'm with you, but ask anyone who's lived with an addict whether that works.
Right.
It doesn't.
So
my mother, for all of her good things, was also an alcoholic. Nothing I did made the alcoholism go away. Straight on, sideways, upside down. At 30, I literally looked her in the face and said, I resign as your healer because I've been trying it for 30 years and I suck at it because you have not gotten better. So I'm firing myself, right? Because I had to let myself off the hook because nothing I did made a difference. And I was like, you know what? It's not my job. And it actually disempowers them when you try to do it for them because you're telling them that they're not capable of doing it for themselves.
So it's really a big shift for us as healers to take a look at, okay, what's driving this thought that I'm having? And if I think that I'm their healer, I'm wrong. There's something to look inside that's needing to shift in me. Why am I taking responsibility for that? Right. I'm here as a guide, but I'm not here as your healer. True?
And what you have to recognize, because I fought with this for years, many, many years, like a decade and a half. I'm not kidding. What you have to recognize is that your attachment to saving everyone is your resistance to being successful.
Interesting. So why? Get down to that.
It's your resistance. It's you saying, well, I have to save all these people. It's you putting an anchor around your feet so that you don't get seen. Because so many of us were killed for our gifts in previous lives, right? And we're like, oh, I don't want to be seen. But if I invest over here, in all these people who will never make me fully successful, then I don't have to be seen, right? But the problem is we need you to be seen right now. The world needs you to be seen. There's a reason. There's 100,000 of us on the planet. My guides told me like 10 years ago, they were like, there's 100,000 people who are going to wake up and be the teachers that facilitate the transition of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And the transition of the planet is happening already. I was told 2 weeks ago that by my guides that I was like, why am I so exhausted? Why is everybody I know exhausted? What is going on? There was a whole week that I just lost because I was like sleeping the whole time. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, we're upgrading your DNA so that you can stay on the planet.
I got the same message. Oh yes. My gosh. Interesting. Because we were laid out. We were so tired here. And I'm like, what's going on? So I sat in with guidance and I said, what's going on? And we got the same message, Kelly. Interesting. So we could stay on the planet. Like even my internals. Even my insides were just like upset and I was struggling to eat. I was eating, but it was not setting well. And I'm like, what's going on? Did I get something bad? Fascinating. So we are shifting. We know we're shifting. People are waking up. We got to become really good at looking inside and going, why am I doing this work? What's motivating? What's this energy behind this? Because you bring up, why are we attracting people with no money?
Right. Yeah. And, that's because we're marketing either using terrible tactics like the bro marketers are giving us, or because we're attached to not being seen. Yeah. Because if we don't make enough money, keep in mind that money is a amplifier, right? So when you have good money coming in, you can pay for Facebook ads to get seen by more people. When you have good money coming in, you can pay for support staff to do, posts for you and to do support in your marketing and in your day-to-day background admin. You can spend the time going out and being seen, right? There's every time money comes into your business, it amplifies your message. And so there's that piece that people don't pay attention to. But then there's also this sabotaging energy that's happening in the far left movements, where it's eat the rich, right? And the problem is when you are setting yourself up to hate people with money, then you will never be one. Yeah. Right? I instead would rather embrace people with money and help them to evolve. If that's what they're choosing, they have to choose it. I can't force it on them. They have to choose it. But I would rather embrace people with money and then help them in their spiritual evolution. And that will impact the energetic world of business and government and so on in so many other ways, right? So, I see so many people getting stuck in this money is evil. And, it's not the root of all, the love of money is the root of all evil is the quote that everybody goes to, but it is not that. It is that a rich man can't make it through the eye of the needle, right? Was the quote from the Bible, I think. But the eye of the needle is actually a very narrow gate in a wall. And it just meant that you can't bring a ton of stuff on a camel or a donkey through the wall because it won't fit. It doesn't mean that the rich man can't get through. It means that he's going to have to take boxes off and carry them by hand. I mean, you have to understand the context, right? There's context, right. And we make it mean something else. And it's the love of money is the root of all evil, but it's not the love. It's the attachment to money, exactly. The greed for money, right. The need to have money fulfill your self-worth definition. That is the root of all evil. Loving money as an energy is not a problem because that's a welcoming energy. I'm loving money. I have a great relationship with money. And so therefore I'm welcoming it into my life like a friend, right? That's a different energy than I am putting money above people, right? That's a different energy, right? And then the other piece that I have recently gotten a really big reminder of in my own business is that when you go into control, which all of us in this trauma-based background love to do because that's safety, when you go into control, you actually shut down the flow of money in your business. We provide the destination, so where we want to go, and the motivation, and the universe provides the navigation. If we try to take over the navigation, we shut down the flow of money. And I had the hardest time with this because for years I was like, well, it's a business. I have to design it. How am I not supposed to be controlling the how? I've got to do it. I've got to pick an angle. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. No, you don't. Okay. What you got to do is get quiet and listen, and then take inspired action.
And I think that's the other big difference, isn't it? Between the typical what I'm going to call typical marketing and intuitive spiritual,
yes, very much
marketing, because we really are relying on, we're not a typical marketing person. It's just the whole platform is different in the aspect that we have guidance. There is such an intention to what we're doing, and a group of people and groups of people that we are to reach, and we're to be guiding and supporting. Therefore, that guidance to get us there is like key, isn't it? It's key.
Absolutely.
So that control, we could even visualize it. What was going through my mind as you were talking about it, it's like my hands around the throat of it.
Basically. Yeah.
If I want flow, if I want airflow, all the vitals, if I want all the vitals, get my hands off my own neck, right? Get my hands off of this coming here. And I mean, to where I'm going, what I'm doing, and let this flow happen. That's such a good mental picture. And why am I wanting that? Really getting into the personal healing. And as we level up, do you realize, or do you feel and observe in your clients that, okay, so at this level, I've let go, I'm good, but now I'm ready to level up. And all of a sudden, where am I back at?
Yeah. Well, we go back and forth into it. If I see people go into control, so it depends on how far into their process and how many identity up levels they've had as to whether they go into control at that point. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But typically where people go into control is when they get burned out. And people say, oh, you can't burn out doing something you love. That is complete crap. I will tell you, I've burned out doing what I love multiple times. It is very easy to do because you are so excited about doing it that you just keep working past your limits and you fall down and go boom, right? And then we say, okay, well, I'm going to lay down for 2 days and then I'll feel better. And then you feel better on the third day and you start working and you start to feel worse and you ignore it. And you start to feel worse and you ignore it, and you start to feel worse and you ignore it, and then you go fall down, go boom, right? And so we never wait long enough to get back up. So I tell people, wait until you feel better and then wait a month after that before you do anything. Right? Because that's the bare minimum. That's if you've burned out for a few days. If you've been burned out for years, it's much longer. Okay. So, but the other piece of the puzzle that I see happen is that people treat the universe as a parent instead of a partner. And so they end up in this endless cycle of what I call the panic pivot. And so they'll do something, they'll put it out, they'll give it a week, maybe 2 to work. And then they'll go, oh, well, 1 million people didn't sign up for it, so it must not be the right thing. The universe didn't give a stamp of approval. I'll do something else. Okay. Stop it. Just stop it. You have to give things a chance to work. And so what I'm going to say is pick one thing, because that's the other thing we do is we dissipate our energies by going in 5 directions at once. So pick one thing that you can commit to for 1 year. This, by the way, is not my advice. This is Taki Moore. He changed my life. This is what actually made my business successful. Do one program to one target market using one platform. So one social media platform, right? For 1 year. Okay. Using one lead magnet. Okay?
Oh, okay.
And if you do that, you will have the focus to 1, give it long enough to work, and 2, to not be frittering your energy in all these other different things. And then you will be able to manifest what it is that you're trying to do, right? So focus. focus, focus, focus. If you hear nothing else I say today, please hear that one, because that was revolutionary for me. Okay. Yeah.
And are you liking the sales letter format, the video format? Is there any insight that you've seen or observed around the types of sales looks?
So in terms of getting business in the door, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, most of my business comes from my podcast. I just got my first client off my TikTok channel, which is, given the fact that I have almost 3,000 followers on TikTok. I have not worked to build that channel. I just post to it. It's my personal channel.
Yeah.
I'm just like, hey, this is what's going on today. And like half of to 2/3 of it is, hey, I moved to Panama recently and here's how that went. Right. So, it's so not a targeted business channel. But and fully half of my followers are from Panama. So they're not potential clients because people make a lot less money here. And so, when you consider that I've got maybe 1,500 people on there, I just closed a client from TikTok, $10,000 client.
Nice.
So, it's about building a relationship. She and I have been talking for months on TikTok, just chatting.
Yeah.
I was not trying to sell her. I was just chatting with her, and she would, make a comment on my videos and I'd have a comment back, and she was listening to my podcast and she would say things and, whatever. And we would talk and that was it. We were just having a conversation and I was not trying to close her. I was just holding the relationship. Right. And so, that's a long burn sales process, which you can only do if you're not in desperation.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So it's about personal connection. Our business is personal.
Well, you have to remember, people get into the spiritual world because they come from traumatic backgrounds. So they don't trust anybody. They don't trust you. And they don't actually care about you until they know that you have something that can help them. So you need to keep that in mind. The people who start their video sales letters with 20 minutes of here's all about me, nobody cares. Okay. Nobody cares all about you. In fact, when I do my promotion, I have a course that I give away in my Elevate program that I actually put the here's about me as a separate video. And I didn't do anything about me in the program itself. And I said, if you want to know who I am, you can go watch that video. Otherwise, let's get started. Right. Because I'd rather let my content speak for itself. I hate having to sit there and listen to somebody blather on about themselves ad nauseum, and I haven't gotten anything of value yet. And I have had people do that for 45 minutes on a call.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
supposed to be 2.5 hours. And I gave up and left the call because I was like, I don't see an end in sight on this.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just like, the only reason I lasted 45 minutes because I was doing other stuff.
You were like,
I was not paying attention. I was like waiting for the blather to stop. Right. And she was just like, oh, well, we're doing blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. You promised this. Give me what you promised. And then maybe I'll care. Right. Yeah. And I'm just like every other person out there. So that's why I love the podcast, is because people can come in and binge. And oh my God, I hear people, I get calls. Oh my God, I get calls from people who would say, oh, I found your podcast last month. Now I've been doing my podcast for 5.5 years weekly. Okay. So every episode is at least half an hour. And they will say, oh yeah, I found you last month. And I'm at, I'm 3 years in. And I'm like, did you sleep?
They're just running in the background. They must, right?
Then they're like, well, I clean pools, or I clean my house, or I'm a delivery driver, or whatever it is that they do.
You're helping them get to town, get to work, get home.
They're just like nonstop on the thing, and it's hysterical. But by the time they come to me, even if they've only binged like 10 or 12 episodes, they feel like they know me. And they inherently already have started to trust me because I've said things that, I'm a big person around. When I give information, I give a lot of information. I am, people tell me they have to listen to the podcast 2, 3, 4 times sometimes to get all the information out of it. And it's because I just want to tell people what I know. Right. I'm like, here, have it. My idea for the podcast is I'm going to give you everything you need to have so that you're ready to work with. right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is the building the foundation that I want you to have so that you're ready to work, right? And so I want to give them as much as I can in that regard. Every single podcast is the equivalent of what you would do in a 2-hour class, right?
Nice. Yeah.
And so, you know, we've just finished episode like 337. So do the math, right? So,
my fingers.
but yeah, so that's why people come in saying, "Oh, I know, like, and trust you," right? Yeah. Because you know, you've already given me enough to prove that you're the real deal, right? Yeah. That you know what you're talking about, that you have my best interests at heart because you're giving away so much, right? And I can do that because I have a lot to talk about, right?
So that's another layer of advice for us as intuitive entrepreneurs is give out, don't think that there's not enough. Yeah. Give out, put out quality information. I was channeling for myself the other day, and that's exactly what they said. They said, don't be afraid, because I was kind of getting into that. There's not enough. And I'm like, what the heck? Let go of that stuff, right? Let go of that shit.
Channeling, there's infinite information.
Exactly, Kelly.
I channel half of my podcasts. I did an episode the other day on what is reality, and I was talking about how you could opt out of reality, and I was like, oh, let me just model that, and I opted out of reality. I pulled my energy field out of reality and into you know, the abyss, effectively. Mm-hmm. And I had never done that before. I didn't plan to do it on my podcast. I didn't know how to do it. I just did it, right? Mm-hmm. Because I just knew how to do it, because I'm channeling half of the stuff I talk about anyway. So who cares, right? It's all good. So yeah, if you're channeling at all, you have infinite knowledge.
Don't hang on to it. Let it go. There's more to come. We cannot house as much as what's coming. So,
oh my gosh, so much.
And Kelle, they can find you. I want to make sure that our audience can find you. We're going to share on this podcast or your link to your website, and the other, so they can connect to your podcast, if I can talk, podcast information, and really plug into the richness that you have there for everybody. It's really amazing material and full of life-changing, shifting. So you want to shift your life, plug into Kelle's material. Yeah. So it's beautiful. And also you're sharing a free gift. So I want to talk about that.
Yeah, so I referenced it earlier. There's so I'm doing a series of classes once a month, and they are all about how to do spiritual business. And so the first one in the series was called Awaken Abundance, and it is sort of the primer for everything. It was a 5-day challenge, and I have it all recorded. And included in that is a spreadsheet that will help you figure out whether or not you'll make $100,000 a year doing the business that you're doing, the way that you're doing it. So it's a great way to look at it, because 100,000 in the U.S. is basically, you know, a living wage at this point. And so it used to be an aspirational wage, but now it's just a living wage. Yeah. So that's called Awaken Abundance. I'm giving that away. It was $97 when people first signed up for it, and so I'm going to give that away. And if you like it, then you can join in the program. The one that's happening this month is what did I call it? Enlightened marketing, and it's all about how to build a lead magnet, something to get people onto your mailing list. And so, if you wonder what a lead magnet is, Awaken Abundance is a lead magnet for me. It gets people on my mailing list, just like the Boundaries for Empaths download that I talked to you about on my website. Those are lead magnets. They're ways that people get onto my mailing list. And so that way people come in the door. And I want to say this because I think it's important to say. I said you can't make a living making $97 sales. And so my program is $97 a month. It's a $97 sale, or it's $497 for the year, right? And so that's a steal of a deal when you look at it, you know, $1,200 worth of versus $500, right? That's a great deal. It encourages people to up level into the higher purchase. But I'm also using this to build my mailing list of people who are spiritual practitioners. And I do that because I do retreats. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I'll make a $97 sale or a $500 sale, but the on the back end, I get people to come out to the retreats. And so, mm-hmm. you know, you can do a smaller sale up front if you have an upsell in the back, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I'm saying this transparently because I want you to know that. I want you to understand that there's a method to the madness there, right? So, and I want you to understand that I'm in integrity with my own message, right? So there's a whole mindset that you have to adopt in order to do this business well. And what I'm really working on, especially in that first program, is really aligning your mindset to a successful business model. So I hope you'll decide to download it and actually use it. It doesn't work if you don't actually go in and watch the program and do it, because that happens a lot. People will get the download and then sign up for the program and then they don't do it. So please, please, please set time aside. If you sign up for it, set time aside to do it and put it in your calendar, because otherwise you're going to miss out. And it's such great information.
And for all of us that are spiritual entrepreneurs, this is what we need. We need to know how to work with who we are and who we are as a business model. And it's different. So Kelle, thank you so much for coming in, sharing your wisdom with us, sharing your heart and your authenticity. I love your authenticity. It's visible. So thank you for bringing all of you and the real you to the table. And we will stay connected. And if y'all missed it, we're going to share the links. Don't forget to look at the subject and get your links to Kelle's material. Okay. See you again at the next table talk. Bye.
Bye.
Wasn't she fun? I find Kelle to be one of the most authentic people, real souls on the planet. What a blessing to have her in our virtual living rooms and share her wisdom with us. If you want to connect, and I hope you do, if you're building your online business, we have the links right here for you. Go into the subject right at the top and they will be there for you. If you see any clips that are not Janell Ray, if you see any bars under my video that are not Janell Ray, they've been advertising that way. And so you can be heads up. You won't get what you're looking for clicking on that. So just be mindful to look at that bar and make sure that it's Janell Ray's bar and not some ad that's been tacked on to my video. So get your links. I would love for you. She's got a free gift for us. I'm going to check that out. If you're building your business, she's the place to go. She knows how to do this. She's been a successful entrepreneur for quite some time. So take advantage of that information. She's also got some classes. So we got her website available to you as well, because developing and getting your business out there, the world's needing you, and she knows how to get you there. If you're trying to figure out how your gifts work, if you're in that stage, and there's no shame in that, we need you. Plug into my resources and let's help you connect you to you. Know your intuitive gifts. How do they show up for you? And let's get those out there as well. So look forward to seeing you again at our next table talk. Thank you for being here. And if you like this video and you got value from this video, hit the like, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell so you get notified that the next one is live. See you at our next table talk.